Second conic that we're going to talk about in this section has to do with parabolas. This should be quite a review because we actually saw parabolas twice during this year. The first equation that you see at the top of the screen is in vertex form. Y equals a times the quantity x minus h squared plus k. And again, we've seen this before and we've graphed these several times in the past. What we talked about is how the h and the k in this form refer to the vertex. How the h visually either shifts the graph to the right or shifts the graph to the left, and how k shifts the graph either up or down a certain amount of units. We also talked about what a means out in front. A, if it is positive, means that the graph will open upwards, or if a is negative, it means that the parabola will open downwards. We also mentioned how if, depending on what that number is, the graph will either widen or narrow. Now, if you take a look at the second equation on the screen, x equals a times quantity y minus k squared plus h, you'll notice it's similar, but it's slightly different. You'll notice two things. The x and the y are switched positions, and the k and the h are switched positions. With this is still a parabola, but when x is by itself and the exponent is on the y instead of the x, the parabola will either open to the left or the parabola will open to the right. Notice, since it's a parabola, it still has a vertex. The vertex still comes from the same place, h, comma, k. So h will go here in the x value, and k refers to the y value. They're just in switched positions in the equation. And a refers to how wide or how narrow the graph will be as well. If a is negative, it will open to the left. If a is positive, the graph will open to the right. And because h and k are switched, this over here, h still refers to left or right because it's the x value, and k will refer to the graph shifting up or down because it still refers to the y value. We always saw that in parabolas, there is a vertical axis of symmetry. So we would have our parabolas, and we would have a vertical axis of symmetry. Since the parabolas here are opening left and right, there will be a horizontal axis of symmetry. And one thing to notice, because it's horizontal, it will come from y equaling a number. Therefore, it will come from the y value, which will be y equals k, is the axis of symmetry. When you're looking to graph a conic, you want to kind of decide what kind of conic it is and what direction it's going to go in. This one, you'll notice it only has one exponent. So for right now, that kind of tells us it's going to be a parabola versus a circle. A circle has two exponents, one on the x, one on the y. Because this is y equals, we know that the parabola will either open up or open down. And because it's -2, that's going to tell us it's going to open down. The next thing you want to point out is what the vertex is. The vertex is going to be the coordinate point 4, 5, meaning that the axis of symmetry will be x equals 4. From there, we can either graph it one of two ways. We can make a t-chart, which has the vertex in the middle, and we create a couple points above and a couple points below that vertex, and that will help me fill in my graph. Or we can talk about the patterns that we've done in the past, knowing that it is 4, 5. It's going to open downward, and a is -2, so 1, 2, I'll put a point here and a point there. Let's go back and fill in that t-chart though. If I put in 3 into the equation, you will get 3 as an answer. If I put 5 into the equation, so in for x right here, you will also get 3 for your y. When you put in 6, you will get negative 8, and that will be the same as negative 2. I'm sorry, that should be negative 8 plus 5, which will be negative 3, and therefore this will be negative 3 as well. And you can see that those points are plotted on the right. For number 2, again, we want to decide what kind of conic it is because there's only one exponent of 2 and it's on the y. We know it's going to be a parabola, but this time it's going to either open left or right. And because A is positive, we know it's going to open to the right. A couple of the standard things that we'll want to figure out is the vertex. The vertex on this one is going to be 0, 0. Therefore, the axis of symmetry will also be y equals 0. Again, it's y because it's a parabola that's open to the right, so the axis of symmetry will be horizontal. Because A is 3, what I'm going to do is I'm going to plot my vertex and I'm going to go over 3 units, 1, 2, 3, and then go one on either side, and that will kind of start me the shape. And then if we remember kind of that pattern, if I'm going down 2, I square that, which is 4, and then multiply it by A, which will be 4 times 3, which is 12. So I'm going to move that second point over 12 units to get my other points. That'll be a little bit off the graph right there and right there, so I can kind of continue that down. Again, another option is to always do a T-chart to get more accuracy with those points. And before we finish up, let's just look at one more example that has an equation that's not in vertex form and talk about a couple different ways we can approach this. We can either approach this by making a T-chart again. And if you remember to calculate the axis of symmetry, you can calculate that by negative b over 2a. And then you plug that in to find y, and that will give you your vertex. And then you can make a T-chart from there. The other way we talked about is to change it to vertex form. And to do that, again, as a reminder, what we're going to do is we want a to be 1. So what we're going to do is divide those first two terms by negative, and then we push out that 12. We're going to complete the square right here. So it's b over 2 squared, so that's going to be 4. And what we do is we're going to keep this balanced. So if I plus here, I'm going to minus that number here, but also keeping track of that negative. So we're really subtracting a 4 here. So what we're going to do is we're going to add a 4 on this side. What that does is it gives us y equals negative x plus 2 squared plus 16. That vertex would be then negative 2, 16. So what I did is I plotted the point negative 2, 16 on my graph. I apologize, it should be up higher. It's a positive 16. So negative 2, 16 on my graph. And if I go back to the equation again, what the equation was y equals, so we know it's going to open up or down. And because it's negative, we know it's going to open downward. And it's A is 1. So here's my axis of symmetry right here. I go over 1, down 1. So those are my first 2 points. And then I'm going to go over over 2, square the 2, which is 4, multiplied by the negative 1. So I'm going down 1, 2, 3, 4 right here. And I'll do the same thing over here. And that will give me a couple points for my parabola opening downwards. Again, you can always make the T-chart once you find the axis symmetry with negative 2, 16 in the middle.